Imagine walking alone on a rainy night, when out of the shadows a trembling little girl whispers, "Please, don't let them find me." In that moment, one man's life shattered by loss collided with hers. And everything changed. This is not just a story about a millionaire CEO or a frightened child. It is about the raw courage to protect, the aching silence of grief, and the extraordinary bond born when two broken lives decide to hold on to each other instead of letting go. As secrets unravel and danger closes in, one promise will echo louder than fear: you're safe now. If you believe in second chances, in hope hidden inside the darkest nights, and in love that finds us when we least expect it, then you've found the right place. Subscribe to the Retold Stories and join us as we bring these powerful journeys to life. Nathan Blake sat in the back of his black town car, staring out through a haze of rain that smeared the city lights into blurred streaks of color. His driver said nothing. After years working for the founder of Blake Innovations, he knew silence was Nathan's only real companion. The photograph on Nathan's phone screen glowed faintly. His late wife Claire, with their daughter Emily, bundled in scarves, smiling at a Christmas tree lighting 3 winters ago. He touched the screen gently, as if that gesture could bridge the impossible distance between memory and the present. For the 3rd year, he had canceled the memorial service, hiding his grief behind the facade of a ruthless CEO who built empires while his heart collapsed quietly inside. That night, he stepped out of the car before reaching his private garage. He needed a walk, 5 minutes of air that was not recycled through glass towers and boardrooms. His polished shoes echoed down an alley slick with rain. The air was sharp and damp, smelling faintly of rust and asphalt. Nathan welcomed the emptiness. But then, he heard it soft at first, almost like a hiccup. Then, a broken sob. The sound cut through his chest, like a blade. He froze. Instinct, honed from his years contracting with military firms, whispered that silence could hide danger, but certain sounds like the cry of a child demanded attention. Following the sound, he found her. A girl no older than 8, crouched behind crates near a dumpster. Her hoodie was torn and oversized. Her small hands clutched a ragged stuffed bunny, its ear missing, its fabric worn thin from love and time. Her hair clung to her cheeks in wet strands. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, wide, glassy, filled with a terror so raw it silenced him. She flinched, as if even his presence might shatter her last thread of safety. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please do not let them find me." Nathan's chest tightened, his breath stilled. For a heartbeat, he was not in that alley. He was in a hospital room again, clutching Claire's cold hand. He was outside Emily's kindergarten, waiting for a little girl who never came. The memories clawed at him, dragging grief like chains. Yet in front of him was another child, trembling, desperate, and unbearably fragile. He crouched low, careful not to spook her further. "No one will find you," he said quietly. "You are safe now." At first, she did not move. Her mistrust was carved into every muscle. But then, with a hesitation that seemed to cost her the last of her strength, she extended her tiny hand. It slid into his palm, so light it was almost nothing, yet Nathan felt the weight of the world in it. He lifted her gently, her frail frame fitting into his arms like she had always been meant to be there. The rain fell harder, but Nathan barely noticed. He only felt her clutch the bunny tighter and her head drop against his shoulder, as if she had finally surrendered to a sliver of safety. Back in his penthouse, smart lights illuminated a pristine world of glass, chrome, and silence. The contrast was unbearable. He laid her carefully on the sofa, her knees scraped, her sneaker missing its laces, her body curling instinctively into itself, even in sleep. Nathan draped a soft throw around her, watching as her fingers refused to release the stuffed bunny. The sight pierced through his armor. His home had been frozen in grief for years, but now, with one frightened child lying on his couch, it felt different. It felt alive with something fragile and terrifying. Responsibility. He poured himself a drink, but did not take a sip. Instead, he stood by the window, staring at her reflection beside his own. For once, he did not see a CEO. He did not see a man who commanded markets and headlines. He saw someone who might still have the power to protect, if he chose to. When she woke, Her first question was not about food or comfort. It was whispered with wary eyes fixed on him. "Are you going to call the police?" He froze, torn between duty and instinct. She spoke again, her voice steady in its brokenness. "If you tell, they will come. Just like they took my mom and dad." The bruise on her arm confirmed everything. Faint yellow edges, shaped unmistakably like fingers. Someone had hurt her. Someone had taken everything from her. Nathan reached for his phone, emergency number keyed in, but her plea stopped him cold. "Please, do not." In that moment, the truth settled like a storm in his chest. She trusted him, however fragile that trust was. To betray it would be to extinguish her last hope. Slowly, deliberately, he erased the numbers from the screen and set the phone down. "I am not calling anyone," he said. "Not tonight." Relief washed over her in silence. She curled into the couch, her small body loosening just enough to let exhaustion claim her. Nathan stood motionless, realizing that with those words he had crossed a line. He was no longer a bystander. He was involved. As dawn seeped through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Nathan brewed oatmeal and set it before her. She did not eat it first, only stared through the glass at the gray city. But when her eyes flicked briefly to the bowl, he recognized it as the first step toward trust. He did not push, he only waited. Later, when she whispered her name Laya, something in him shifted. It was no longer the girl. She was Laya, a child with a story carved into scars and silence. A child who had chosen him, even briefly, as her shield. That morning, Nathan made a silent vow. He had spent years building walls around himself, convincing the world and himself that grief had claimed all he had to give. But Laya's trembling voice in that alley, her hand slipping into his, had cracked those walls. He could walk away, return to his empty empire, and let the authorities take over. Or he could stay, risking everything to protect the fragile life that had found its way into his arms. He chose to stay. And that choice, quiet but irrevocable, would alter both of their lives forever. The next day, Nathan could not ignore the lingering unease that pressed against his chest. Laya sat curled on the sofa, wrapped in a throw blanket, her stuffed bunny held tightly as though it contained every answer she could not speak. Her silence was not emptiness. It was the heavy quiet of someone carrying secrets far too large for such small shoulders. Nathan's instincts told him that silence often spoke louder than words. When he asked where her home had been, she whispered an address. Malbury Street, number 12. Her voice trembled, as if naming it alone risked summoning shadows. Nathan drove her there, taking back streets, his eyes constantly shifting to the mirrors. He had spent his adult life navigating hostile negotiations and boardrooms filled with hidden knives, but the tension now was different. This was not about profit or reputation. This was about a child who had trusted him with her truth. The house was little more than ruins. The paint was charred, the doors split, graffiti scrawled across the broken walls. Nathan felt Laya shrink beside him. Inside, silence clung like ash. Furniture overturned, photographs blackened, walls scarred by fire that had not consumed everything but had destroyed enough. Laya's small fingers brushed the edge of a broken couch. "That is where I was," she whispered, eyes fixed on the doorway where the world had come crashing in. Nathan followed her gaze. Stains on the linoleum hinted at violence too raw to erase. His throat tightened as he noticed a child's crayon snapped in half, a singed paper with pink stars at the edges. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a shining sundae. One of them carried a bunny. Beneath the picture, in block letters, uneven but hopeful, the words read, "Our family safe." Nathan's chest ached. Then, as if pulled by memory, Laya touched her stuffed bunny, her hand trembling. She reached beneath its uneven stitches and revealed something metallic hidden deep inside, a small flash drive, worn and silver. "They are looking for this," she whispered. Her father had told her to keep it hidden. Nathan held the drive, realizing with a heavy certainty that this was no random runaway story. This was evidence something powerful enough to get people killed. Back at his penthouse, Nathan called the only person he trusted with secrets this dangerous. Renee Vasquez, his longtime cybersecurity advisor, sharp and unyielding, had saved him more than once in the world of corporate espionage. Her voice crackled over the line, wary but steady. He explained what he had, and she understood immediately. The files were encrypted, possibly government grade. They would need a clean environment to open them. Nathan refused to send them electronically. "Too risky," he said. "I will bring it myself." That night, as rain streaked the glass, Laya curled on the couch, her bunny clutched under her chin. Nathan adjusted the faded yellow blanket one that had once belonged to his daughter and whispered, "No one will touch you here, not while I am breathing." She stirred faintly, murmuring words he barely caught. "Daddy said, keep running." His heart broke quietly at the weight she carried. The next morning, Nathan noticed a change. She did not run to him, but she lingered in the same room. She watched cartoons faintly, the sound of laughter bubbling out once, surprising both of them. He made pancakes, clumsy at first, shaping them into a smiley face with blueberries. She eyed them cautiously before taking a bite. "Blueberries are lumpy," she announced, her lips twitching towards something close to a smile. Nathan let out a laugh, the first real one in years. As the days passed, the fragile trust between them grew in tiny increments. Her drawings taped to his fridge, her voice soft but steady when she said, "My name is Laya Carter." He listened to her stories about crayons and cartoons as if they were confessions of survival. Each moment chipped away at the ice inside his home, thawing the years of silence left after Emily and Claire were gone. But safety was an illusion. One evening, as night pressed against the penthouse glass, Nathan noticed it, a drone hovering outside, watching. The moment his eyes met it, it zipped away. His pulse surged. Whoever had been searching for Leia was still searching, and now they knew where she was. By dawn, Nathan had made his decision. He packed swiftly, leaving only a coded message for Renee, "Gone off-grid. Will contact when safe." They drove to a cabin on the cliffs above the reserve, a place Nathan had not visited in years. The air smelled of salt and pine, and the ocean stretched endlessly below. To Nathan, the cabin was refuge. To Laya, it was something she had never known, quiet safety. But storms carried their own ghosts. One night, thunder rolled, and she cried out in panic. "It is them," she sobbed. The storm had been the backdrop of her family's last night. She was not hearing thunder. She, Bragg, was reliving trauma. Nathan pulled her close, whispering against her tangled hair. "You survived. You protected what mattered. You are not a burden. You are a reason." His words cracked with emotion, but they held her steady until exhaustion carried her into sleep. Later that night, a message came from Renee. The files were worse than expected. A trail of corruption stretched through City Hall, tied to Councilman Avery Thorne, Police Lieutenant Carl Donahue, and, to Nathan's horror, Marcus Lanning, his own general counsel, a man he had trusted for a decade. Laya's mother had uncovered the scheme, tried to flag it, and paid the ultimate price. Nathan looked at the sleeping girl, her bunny tucked safely in her arms, and knew retreat was no longer an option. They could not hide forever. It was time to fight. The city was still asleep when Nathan Blake guided the SUV into the underground garage of the safe house. His grip tightened on the steering wheel as he glanced at the small figure in the passenger seat. Laya sat quietly, clutching her stuffed bunny, the purple ribbon in her hair slipping slightly with each bump in the road. She did not ask where they were going. She simply trusted him. That unspoken trust carried more weight than any boardroom alliance he had ever forged. Inside, Federal Agent Maria Calderon greeted them. She crouched to meet Laya's eyes and asked softly if she was ready to be a hero. The girl only nodded, hugging the bunny tighter. Nathan felt his chest tighten with both pride and fear. He had faced hostile negotiations, international scandals, and near-death moments in corporate sabotage, but nothing compared to watching this child walk into the shadow of a courtroom to tell the truth. The day before the testimony, they prepared in the cabin. Nathan held flashcards, teaching Laya words she would hear in court: testimony, evidence, objection. She stumbled over them at first, her small voice hesitant, but each time he corrected her, gently. When she asked what would happen if she messed up, he knelt before her and whispered, "You are telling the truth. That is enough. That will always be enough." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded, as if borrowing strength from his certainty. On the morning of the trial, Laya wore a simple navy dress. Nathan gave her a necklace that had belonged to Claire, something delicate but strong, a reminder that bravery came in many forms. When he clasped it around her neck, she stood taller, though her hands still trembled. They drove in silence, avoiding main roads, the city rising in front of them like a wall of glass and concrete. Nathan felt every car in the rearview mirror like a threat, but he kept his voice calm when he told her, "They will hear you. I promise." At the courthouse, reporters gathered outside, unaware of the storm about to break. Inside, tension was palpable. Councilman Thorne had not appeared, his lawyers citing an excuse no one believed. Marcus Lanning sat at the defense table, sweat clinging to his temples. Nathan stayed close to Laya as they were led to a private room with a video link to the courtroom. She would testify without facing the accused directly. Still, the weight of it pressed on her shoulders. When the prosecutor asked her to state her name, her voice trembled. "My name is Laya Carter." Nathan stood just out of the camera's view, his eyes fixed on her, silently reminding her she was not alone. As she began to speak, her voice steadied. She described the storm, the breaking door, the men shouting, her mother sewing something into Mr. Whiskers, her father telling her to run. She spoke of fear, of the moment she looked back and saw her parents taken. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge leaned forward, listening to the raw truth, spilling from a child who should never have carried such burdens. Laya did not cry. She did not falter. She simply told the truth, with the clarity only a child could bring. By the time she finished, Nathan's eyes stung. He had promised her she would not carry this alone, and yet watching her stand so small yet so strong made him realize she was carrying them all. The evidence Renee had uncovered, the contracts, the surveillance footage, the transfers of money lined up perfectly with Laya's words. Within hours, Donahue was arrested, Thorne surrendered, and Lanning's career disintegrated. Headlines exploded across the city. But for Nathan, none of it mattered as much as the moment Laya turned her head toward him and whispered, "I did it." He knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. "We did it," he whispered back. In the days that followed, the world moved quickly. Arrests, resignations, press conferences, but inside the safe house, life slowed. Nathan stayed with Laya, cooking simple meals, sitting with her through sleepless nights, reading her stories when she asked. The trial had ended, but healing was only beginning. She did not smile much at first. She carried silence like armor. But one morning, over a bowl of cereal, she asked softly, "Do I have to go somewhere else now? A foster home?" Nathan set down his spoon and looked her straight in the eyes. "No, you stay with me if that is what you want." Her voice was so small it almost broke him. "Can you adopt someone like me?" Nathan reached across the table and took her hand. "Yes, and I already started the paperwork." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled, thin, trembling, and real. That smile was worth more than every fortune he had ever built. Weeks later, a quiet ceremony took place. No cameras, no headlines, just a judge, a few papers, and a little girl holding her bunny. When the gavel fell, her name became Laya Blake. Nathan stood beside her, hand in hers, his heart heavier and lighter all at once. They walked out of the courthouse into a park where spring blossoms carried the scent of jasmine. Laya spotted a sunflower blooming near the gate. She placed Mr. Whiskers at its base, whispering that her mother used to love them. Nathan nodded softly, telling her Claire had too. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the grief that had once separated him from the world became a bridge to the little girl beside him. Life slowly found a rhythm. Laya decorated her new bedroom with yellow walls and stars on the windows. She went to school under a new name, made friends, laughed more often. Nathan stepped back from Blake Innovations, appointing others to manage what once consumed him, and instead founded a program to protect children like Laya, those who carried truths too dangerous for the world to ignore. One evening, as stars spread across the sky, Nathan sat on the porch with Laya. She leaned against him, her journal open, her handwriting steady. "This winter, I do not have to hide anymore," she had written. She asked quietly if it was all right that she still missed her parents. Nathan pulled her close. "Of course it, Island." She smiled faintly, then asked, "Do you remember when I said I dreamed someone good would find me?" He looked at her, his chest aching with a fullness he had not felt in years. She smiled wider this time. "You did." "No, Leia," he said gently. "You found me, and under a sky full of stars, they began again not as a man and a child bound by tragedy, but as a family bound by choice, by love, and by the unshakable truth that healing is possible, even after the darkest storms. There are moments in life when everything changes, not because we planned it, not because we were ready, but because life placed someone in our path who needed us, and in saving them, we find ourselves saved too." Nathan Blake thought he had nothing left to give. His world was built on glass towers and silent nights haunted by memories of what he had lost. He had convinced himself that grief was permanent, that love had no place in his life anymore. And yet, on a rain-soaked night in San Diego, a trembling little girl whispered, "Please do not let them find me." And everything shifted. What began as an impossible choice whether to walk away or to protect became the start of a journey neither of them expected. Laya was not just a frightened child hiding from shadows. She carried the weight of truth, a truth powerful enough to expose corruption and strong enough to demand courage from a man who had long buried his own. By choosing to hold her hand instead of turning away, Nathan discovered that even broken hearts can still protect, can still love, and can still begin again. Their story is not just about danger and survival. It is about the small, fragile moments that rebuild trust. A smiley face pancake, a blanket smelling faintly of lavender, a crayon drawing taped proudly on a refrigerator door. It is about finding laughter again in a house that once echoed only with silence. It is about two souls who had lost everything but found each other, and in that finding, created a new family. Laya's courage in the courtroom reminded the world that truth, even spoken by the smallest voices, can topple the tallest walls of corruption. Nathan's choice to stand beside her proved that love does not vanish with grief. It waits, quietly, for the moment when we choose to open our hearts again. Together they showed us that safety is not just a place, it is a promise. And healing is not about forgetting, but about building something new out of the pieces of what was broken. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can arrive in the most unexpected ways and that second chances are worth fighting for, then you belong here with us. These are the stories that remind us of hope, that show us resilience, and that prove no one is ever too lost to be found. Join us on the Retold Stories. Subscribe today, and let us continue sharing the journeys that heal, inspire, and remind us all that tomorrow is always a gift.